Card number 5 is this 2003-2004 Topps Jersey Edition Logo Man 1 of 1 of Ron Artest. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Topps Jersey Edition, it was a 2-year product from Topps where basically the base cards were just basic relics. And then the only prime was this Logo Man 101. And there were other variations of the regular relics. I think there was a copper, there was a black. And like I said, that product was out for 2 years. And I've got a Fred Jones here, not because it's on the list, but just to show you the difference between the 02 and the 03. I actually like the 02 design better, but I don't have the Artest from that set. But I do have it for 2003, and Ron Artest is my PC guy. And every time I post these, people kind of rag on these because maybe they weren't around at the time or whatever. Or, you know, it does kind of look a little amateur because they just took the jersey window here and instead of extending the foil here, they just kind of extended the cutout. So it looks like a custom or looks like a fake, but in all reality, it is the real deal. Although there were some fakes that floated around out there. One of the things that you really need to look for, I'll flip it over here so you can see it, is the stamping. On the 2003-2004, the 1 of 1 was written as a 1 and a slash and a 1 here at the bottom. And then on the 02-03, let me put this cover back on here. It was on the top side, and it was written out as 1 of 1. But something that's pretty cool that they'll also show you on the back here is that this jersey was acquired from NBA Properties, which Topps always said. But they told you, like in this case, this Artest was used in the 2003-2004 NBA regular season. Now, this was a card when I was collecting Ron Artest in high school. I would never imagine that I would own this one. So, years later when the opportunity came up, I think around maybe 2015, 2016, when the opportunity came up to acquire this card on eBay, I jumped at it because it was so nostalgic for me. And to this day, it is still a centerpiece of my collection. That's why this card ranks at card number 5. Card number 4 is another Ron Artest card. Yes, get used to that. And it comes from a product called 2005-2006 Topps Big Game. And this is the In the Name set. And kind of like it sounds, it is a piece of the nameplate. This case, it is the letter T. And between the In the Name set and the Selective Swatches set from Topps Big Game, I felt like that was kind of a precursor to maybe 2012 Immaculate. Not to say that, they're exactly the same or the designs are the same, but it was nice to get all of these jumbo patches for so many players early on in the 2000s. I mean, there were a lot of, lesser known players that got cards in this set as well. So that was a pretty big deal, especially for player collectors. I was not able to acquire this back in the day when I was collecting Ron Artest. I wish I had been able. These were cards that I saved pictures of them on my computer, on my hard drive, because it was kind of like a little museum that I was building, but never thought I'd own one. They were always kind of out of reach, and I wish I had grabbed them back then. They were considerably cheaper, but my hobby budget was next to nothing. So let's take a look at the design of this card real quick. I know the front is maybe not, ideal. It'd be nice if there's a picture of Ron Artest on there, but they didn't give us that on the front. Instead, we got this kind of this basketball design, and no, it's not bumpy. It looks like it should be, like some of the, the cards from like 1996 that had that basketball design. But we did get a picture of Ron on the back, among other things. So you've got the picture of Ron Artest here. You've got the name of the player here, and what typically happened was a Topps employee went through with a marker and they put an X by whatever letter was featured on the front of this card. Now, in this case, they actually put an X by the wrong T. Not a big deal, but you can tell that just using the pinstripes to line it up. Not a big deal. It's still the letter T. And then we've got a 101 here. It's not a stamp on this card. They just printed it on there. And it says the letter on the front of this jersey, front of this card comes from the game-worn jersey shown here. And then we did get the Topps 101 sticker. That seemed like a pretty big deal back in the day. That always made these cards feel very official. And then the thing that I like the most, they've got a picture of the game-worn jersey there. Now, if you'll notice, this is from when Ron Artest wore 91, which was a very short time frame. That was the 2004-2005 season. Well, 5 weeks into that season was the brawl in Detroit. So he only wore this jersey for a short amount of time. I think the Pacers played 17 games in that time span. Ron was injured for some of those. If you take out the home games, counting preseason, I think there were only like 8 games that this jersey could have been from. So I actually went on Getty Images and looked at multiple pictures from each one of those games, trying to line the pinstripes up to figure out what game this was from. And sadly, I wasn't able to match it up. So that's a little concerning to me. Maybe it was there was one preseason game I didn't have pictures of, or maybe he wore a couple jerseys during a game. I know some players will switch jerseys at halftime. Or, truth be told, even though this says it's game worn, maybe this was a big batch of jerseys that the Pacers gave Topps at some point during the season. And it was game issued, but because of the brawl, Ron never got to wear it. Either way, it's a piece of history associated with my player from one of my favorite sets, so you can see why this ranks so high on my countdown. This here is card number 4. Card number 3 features another card from the same product that I just talked about. This is a 2005-2006 Topps Big Game Selective Swatches card of Reggie Miller. And the Ron Artest that I just showed you was from the In the Game set, which had kind of the basketball pattern around the side. So that had just nameplate pieces, whereas Selective Swatches had maybe team logos, like the Bulls had a bull head on the back of their jersey. I've seen some of those. In this case here, it is the name Indiana from a Pacers home jersey. So pretty nice looking patch still. The card itself, the design isn't all that great, but the patch kind of speaks for itself here. And then if you flip it over, there's some of the same features that I really liked from the In the Name set. You'll also see on the Selective Swatches set. They've just kind of moved some of the stuff around. So they don't have the name up here. They moved the picture down a little bit. It still says it's a 1 of 1. It still says that the patch came from a game-worn jersey as shown. So you can see that Reggie Miller jersey here on this side. And interesting fact about this card, this is the card that kind of sold me on using Instagram, because I joined Instagram sometime around 2018 and was just trying to get used to it and just wanted to join something that would help me to share my cards and would help me to network a little bit. Well, about a week after I joined Instagram, someone reached out to me and he said, I know where a Reggie Miller Selective Swatch card is, but it's going to cost you. It's not going to be cheap at all. And I was kind of bracing myself for the price that was about to show up on my screen. And lo and behold, it seemed pretty reasonable. So I happily sent him the money, and the card came my way. And ever since then, I have not looked back. I've used Instagram for all sorts of networking and acquiring cards and making deals. So it's been a very valuable hobby platform for me. So combine that with the fact that this is from one of my favorite products of all time, one of my favorite sets of all time, one of my favorite players of all time, then it's pretty easy to see why this card made it into my top 3. Number 2 on my list is this 2005-2006 Upper Deck Ultimate Collection autographed NBA logo patch 101 of Ron Artest. And I've said it before that Ron Artest doesn't have a lot of on-card autographs in a Pacers uniform. Well, this is one of the few that are out there. And I honestly think that it was probably signed after he had been traded to the Kings for Peja Stojakovic. Because if you look at the signature here, this is something that I haven't seen on the other Pacers ones. This is one that was on a lot of the Kings cards, maybe that featured Pacers relics. But it's got his autograph, and then it's got the number 93. And the first time he wore 93 was when he was with the Kings. And just a side note here, every number that Ron had stood for something. So like the 9 and the 3 are supposed to stand for a Q and a B, as in Queensbridge, which is where he's from. So interesting little note about that. So I think that was from that transition time where he was traded or after he was traded. But needless to say, this is a card from a set that was a premium product, and the look matches the price of the card. A lot of times we'll see high dollar sets now that don't necessarily look like high dollar cards, but this is one that matches up for me. This is my PC player, very rare card, so when that popped up at auction, I put in a ridiculous number and kind of cringed when it got there, but when all is said and done, I am very happy to own this card. And this is number 2 on my countdown. All right, we finally made it. Card number 1 on my 50 favorite cards countdown does not include Ron Artest, although it probably should, but it includes a lot of his contemporaries. It is a 2004-2005 Skybox Fresh Ink 5-on-5 jerseys Prime Edition, numbered to 10. And you see here, if you're looking at this, you might be thinking, well, I wouldn't envision a Pistons card would be your favorite card. And to me, even though this is the front of the card, this is not a Pistons card. I'm going to put the cover on here so I can flip it over for you. But this is a Pacers card. And as you can see here, it's got Reggie Miller, Jamal Tinsley, Austin Crozier, Jonathan Bender, and David Harrison. Now, probably not the strongest Pacers lineup that they could have rolled out with. Probably not even the strongest Pacers lineup that they had materials for, especially when you compare it to the Pistons on here. I mean, you've got Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed, Rip Hamilton, and Ben Wallace. That is a tough starting lineup there. But my theory here is that they were going to include at least some combination of Ron Artest, Jermaine O'Neal, and Steven Jackson on here had they not been involved in the brawl. So this was a very intense rivalry before the brawl, so I think that's why the card was designed to begin with, because they had already had a couple of tough playoff series with one another. But then the brawl happened, and I know Ron Artest got pulled from all of the products after that. I think Jermaine O'Neal ended up back in some products, as did Steven Jackson, but at this time, it looks like they chose not to include them. So this was still a tough card to land. Number one, even just seeing it is hard enough. The jersey version is numbered to 199, and those don't pop up all that often. This one's numbered to 10. And if you think about it here, I was battling with team collectors for both the Pacers and the Pistons, and then player collectors for a lot of really good players. So I'm very fortunate to have obtained this one. I've had a lot of people ask me about this one, but this goes back to my favorite era of Pacers basketball. It goes back to a rivalry that I was very emotionally invested in, a rivalry that I still think about to this day. Of course, the brawl, I still think about that a lot to this day. We've had some documentaries come out since then. Reggie's one of my favorite players. I've had David Harrison on the show. So overall, this is just a very important card to me that brings back a lot of memories, and this is the number 1 on my countdown. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate everyone that's messaged me and commented and shared this video. Thanks once again.